Thanks so much, and thank you for having us. My name is Joanna Klever. I work for APCO Worldwide in Berlin, Germany. I'm a public affairs and communications consultant within the consultancy APCO Worldwide. My day-to-day job is to advise clients on political as well as communications issues here in Germany.
And Hélène.
So my name is Hélène Legay. I'm a senior consultant at APCO Worldwide, and I work as part of the Global Solutions team, which is our government relations practice. And I advise clients on communication issues, particularly looking at challenging geopolitical issues. And I'm based in London.
Thank you both for joining us here on Fuse. Hélène, maybe I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on how DE&I is accepted as something that workplaces need to do?
Absolutely. So I would start by saying that APCO is headquartered in DC, so we have a sort of strong American culture, but the power of APCO is to really be able to sort of duplicate these values and cultures in the different parts of the world where we operate. So we've had a DEI council in North America for a while now, and there had been plans of having a European-focused council also for a while. But for us, the catalyst was really the killing of George Floyd in the US and the massive wave of protests that happened in Europe last summer. I think it was a real moment of reckoning. And for us, we realized that we really needed to make our industry and our company more diverse and inclusive. But we also wanted to do it in a way that reflects the local differences that we might have towards these topics. You don't talk about diversity and inclusion in the UK as you would do in France, where the notion of equality is so central to our understanding of these issues. So it was really important for us as we built this council to really have teams represented like from every country where APCO operates in Europe and all consultant levels. So we could really have this sort of empathetic and granular approach to these themes, and not sort of have a blanket approach which would be dictated from the US or the UK on these issues.
Joanna, maybe I could ask you, talking of the council and how that works, what is the structure and how do different voices get heard?
Thank you. Yeah, that is a very important aspect as we start to talk about D&I issues within APCO Europe. So we have been set up in the last year as an employer-led council where from all of our offices, and we have offices spreading across the entire European continent, those individuals who felt compelled to become part of this council have come together in regular calls and meetings to establish what the priorities are and what it is that we actually want to do within our European team. We are operating under the executive sponsorship by our leadership, which we are extremely grateful for and which we really need to also take the time out of our daily routines to really focus on those matters. And we're working very closely not only with our founder and our CEO, but also with our global human resources team. So as we are set up across the team, the leadership is really comprised of individuals who come from across the European offices, coming together each week, each month, to really identify what it is that we need to work on. Another aspect that we have focused on is one that is really ingrained into our APCO thinking, not only as we look into ourselves, but also as we work with our clients, and that it is an insight-led approach. So right at the start, once we decided we really want to do this, we took a very broad inclusivity surveying and asking all of our European team as what it is important to you, what it is that you need to see changed, and also would there be aspects pertaining to diversity and inclusion that you as an individual employee really need to see and feel heard and really change.
In terms of, maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, we look at the constitution of France and equality absolutely being at the core of that. Hélène, what does that bring into operational values for you, your colleagues who are originally from France and still based in France?
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, equality is really the sort of the French lens through which we need to see these topics. And as you mentioned, it's not only a matter of values, but it's also something that is reflected in the legal aspects of some of these considerations. You can't discriminate a certain group in France as your as part of your recruitment efforts, for example. You can't mention that you're looking for candidates from a specific background, and you also can't collect data based on people's religion or racial background, which is different from the UK approach, for example. So it's definitely something that we need to navigate, and it's not only a matter of law; it's also a matter of language. Is how do we talk about our efforts and make them relevant to France, for example? So actually, something that we're talking quite a lot about at the moment is how can we translate in French our sort of one of our key work streams, which is community outreach, because the term community is actually very American and British, and it doesn't necessarily translate in France in the same way. So it's all these kind of considerations, again, around law, around language, around finessing how do we speak about what we do, that is really crucial to buy in inside the company, so that people really feel like they are part of this effort and they support it, rather than something that sounds foreign or slightly disconnected from local realities.
And this is why conversations like this are so important. The construct of that community piece and how it applies is fascinating. I don't know how many other countries throughout Europe that would be the case for, or even for that matter, different parts of the world, and how that approach is handled. Joanna, when we look at those national differences and those different sensitivities, Hélène was just mentioning about not gathering information, and not necessarily like in the UK, we're very much, let's identify a group, let's get that information, and then let's address and let's pound this and let's get it done. Where labels is always a very contentious issue, because it's then, once you've got this information, what do you do with it? How that's dealt with. So if you're in a country or a different culture where that information isn't gathered compared to one where it is gathered, we work in a profession where data is so important to what we do. So do you think that there are, in these differences between different countries and how it's managed, areas where the local leadership really has to go, stop, this is our process, you obviously need to respect how we do this, and we simply do not have this information, but through the way we work and the way we know our community, the way we know our people, our colleagues, our fraternity, how we address similar issues, but not having access to data.
Yeah, absolutely. The beauty of this program, really, or even I would even call it journey, I think, as we are experiencing it within APCO Europe at this point, is that it really is a journey to not only understand, but then also really drive change where change needs to happen. And there can never and there must never be really one blueprint that will have to be implemented in the same way in each country. Really, what we're experiencing for the past 9 months is the beauty of the European spirit, if I may be as emotional about this, because we're talking about issues that pertain to all of us, of equality, of inclusion, of access, but we're also very cautious of the fact that not only our individual journeys, but also the journeys that we as societies within countries might be on might be very different. I'm thinking of how we are talking about our colonial past. Are we even talking about our colonial past? If you ask that a Brit or a French person or a German person, the answers might be quite different, even in terms of awareness and how we access it. At the same time, Europe as a whole, but then also individual European countries have seen very different stories of migration, and people and communities really coming to the countries and making that their new home. And that will also feed into the way that we within APCO look at how should we actually roll out this program. And so what we have been doing is trying to find different programmatic areas where we can really spread them out across the whole continent. I'm thinking of how we're interviewing candidates. We have, for example, tried to raise CVs, and we're trying to also implement that across our European team, so that CVs are not the benchmark as to how we recruit, but really it is people's passion and drive and the way that they come and present themselves to us. The same applies to how we ask questions when we interview them in the process. Try to make that more fair, more accessible. The same goes as to how we try to advocate and educate our staff, and to make that at European level. At the same time, the way that we approach different minority groups or historically marginalized groups is very different across the country. And so I think this is where we're really trying to strike the balance between bringing our whole European team with us on their journey, inviting everyone to be part of it, but at the same time trying to be as thoughtful and empathetic as we can about differences.
How do you ensure that there is a mix of views, a mix of opinions, a mix of positions, traditions, backgrounds on this council that came together to really drive this forward? I mean, I'm not looking necessarily at breakdowns, because quotas aren't necessarily helpful, but it's the views and the backgrounds that really influence this. How was it put together to ensure that there is a diversity of thought to then include other people from other areas of the organization?
Amazingly enough, not having forced or specifically asked anyone to join, we have built a council of more than 40 people who are participating in our effort. And it is a diverse, colorful, energetic, and very motivated group who are on the job, if I may say so. So we never really had to ask ourselves the question of how do we get a more diverse thought group here together. To the contrary, and to reiterate a point from before, seeing the amazingly encouraging and empowering support that we're receiving from our leadership, D&I has really been put at the top of the things that APCO is doing in 2020 and is continuing to do in 2021 and beyond. So the conversation has been kicked off before, and it is really taking up speed, and we're so happy to see the group, the leadership, but also the entire APCO team to be so eager and really bringing along change.
When we started, we created a pledge, and the pledge, the first line of the pledge is that we pledge to not discriminate, and I think that's really the foundation of our work. And this is a journey, you know. We are jumping on this train from different stations, from different perspective. We're sort of learning as we go, and we won't always get it right, but I think our main message is that it's okay to get things wrong sometimes, but as long as we keep trying, we keep trying to improve ourselves, this is what really matters.
Joanna and Hélène, thank you so much for joining us here on Fuse. I'd like to give people the opportunity to be able to get in touch and to follow up on topics and follow up with people. Hélène, where can people find out more information about you, get in touch, and more about the organisation?
Absolutely. You can get in touch with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. Both have my full name, so I'm quite easy to find.
The same applies to me regarding myself, and then of course APCO Worldwide is found under exactly that name on the internet as well, and there is multiple points to get in touch with us. We'd be delighted to hear from your listeners and the bubble out there.
Thank you so much for joining us here on Fuse.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.